When my own son told me I wasn't welcome at his wedding because I would ruin the aesthetic, I felt something inside me shatter. But what none of them knew was that the man they thought was too simple, too old-fashioned, and too embarrassing was about to teach them a lesson they would never forget. Stay until the end, because the same woman who banned me for looking bad would soon be on her knees in front of 200 guests, begging me for forgiveness. My name is Richard Marlowe, and for 40 years I have repaired the heartbeats of time itself. I'm a watchmaker. The kind of man who still polishes gears by hand and keeps his promises the same way he keeps his clocks, steady and precise. My little shop sits on a quiet corner near the park, a place where the tick-tock never stops, even when life does. I wasn't always alone here. My wife Helen used to sit beside me, humming softly while I worked. But 5 years ago, she left this world as suddenly as a clock that stops without warning. Since then, my only reason to wake up every morning has been my son, Ethan. I poured every drop of love I had into him, paid for his college, helped him start his business, gave him everything I could so he'd never feel small in a world that worships appearances. When Ethan introduced me to Clara, his future wife, I wanted to like her. She was bright, charming, the kind of woman who knows exactly how to smile when a camera is nearby. But there was something behind that perfect smile. A calculation, like someone constantly measuring her reflection in other people's eyes. I pushed the thought aside. Love makes people see what they want to see, and I wanted my son happy. 4 months, the two of them planned their dream wedding, grand, elegant, the kind you only see in glossy magazines. Ethan would visit my shop, telling me about the venue, the lights, the designer suits, the sponsorship deals Clara had secured through her social media followers. I listened, smiling, though deep down I missed the simplicity of love that didn't need hashtags. Then, 3 weeks before the big day, Ethan came by early in the morning. He didn't look like the confident young man I'd raised. His eyes darted around the shop like he was searching for a way to escape his own words. Clara and I have been talking, he began, his voice trembling. She thinks maybe it's better if you don't come to the wedding. At first, I thought he was joking. But he kept talking about image, about sponsors, about how my old suit and work-worn hands might not fit the theme. Every word felt like a hammer striking the gears inside me. My son, my flesh and blood, was asking me not to attend the most important day of his life because I wasn't photogenic enough. I wanted to shout, to shake him, to remind him who had built the foundation beneath his success. But all I could do was stand there, my hands still smelling of oil and brass, while he said the unthinkable. Dad, please try to understand. It's not personal, it's just branding. Branding. That was the word he used. Not love, not family, branding. He left the shop soon after, and the sound of the doorbell echoed through the silence like a final tick before the clock stops. I stood there for a long time, staring at the doorway where my son had just walked out, feeling every second stretch into eternity. That was the moment I realized something. People can polish gold until it shines, but underneath, the rust still lives. And if they think I'm too old, too plain, too unworthy to stand beside them, then they've forgotten who taught them what worth even means. So I made a promise to myself right then, I wouldn't beg to attend that wedding. But I also wouldn't disappear quietly. I would remind my son, and his perfect bride, that dignity doesn't need approval to shine. Because sometimes, the man they try to hide from the camera becomes the one the whole world ends up watching. The days after that conversation felt heavier than the ticking of any clock I'd ever repaired. Every sound in my shop, the creak of the stool, the soft buzz of the light, the echo of passing footsteps, reminded me that the space where my son once stood was now filled with silence. I kept thinking back to the boy he used to be. The one who'd sit beside me, legs swinging from the counter, asking how time fit inside a watch. I'd laugh and tell him that time didn't fit anywhere. It lived in the heart of those who valued it. He'd smile, those same green eyes shining with curiosity. That boy had once promised me, "Dad, when I grow up, you'll never be alone." But somewhere between business meetings and polished shoes, that promise had been lost. To understand the pain, you'd have to know what Helen and I went through to raise him. We didn't come from much, Just two people trying to keep love alive inside a one-bedroom apartment above this very shop. Helen taught piano lessons to children in the evenings, and I spent my nights fixing timepieces people had long forgotten. Some nights, we went to sleep hungry, but we never let Ethan feel it. He was the miracle we built our world around. I remember the day he graduated, how Helen cried when she saw him in that black cap and gown, how proud she looked when he held his diploma. I promised her that night, as long as I'm alive, I'll keep him safe. I never imagined that the danger would come from a love wearing designer heels. When Helen passed away, Ethan changed. He became distant, ambitious in a way that felt desperate, like he was chasing something invisible, something he thought would fill the hole his mother left behind. And then came Clara. She swept into his life like a storm of perfume and perfection. Everyone admired her confidence, her charm, the way she could make anyone feel seen. Even I wanted to believe she was good for him. For months, I told myself that my discomfort was just loneliness, that I was afraid of being replaced. But I wasn't wrong. Clara never wanted a family, she wanted a display. So I invited her to dinner, offered her coffee whenever she passed by the shop. She always declined with that polite smile that never reached her eyes. When she looked around the shop, it was as if she was seeing through dust rather than history. Ethan visited less and less. His messages became shorter, his tone more guarded. He'd talk about image, about how Clara's work as a lifestyle influencer was opening doors for both of them. "Dad, this is the modern world," he said once. "Perception matters." Perception. Another word that sounds beautiful until it cuts you. One night as I locked up, I looked at Helen's photo on the wall, the one where she's laughing in sunlight, and I whispered, "You'd know what to say, wouldn't you?" Her silence answered everything. That's when I realized the truth. It wasn't the wedding that hurt me. It was losing the boy who once believed love was enough. And even though my hands were shaking, I knew one thing for sure. Love without respect isn't love at all. So I waited. Not because I forgave them, but because life has a way of revealing truth at the perfect time. And when it does, I'd be ready. It was 2 weeks before the wedding when Ethan showed up again at the shop. The bell above the door rang softly, but instead of bringing warmth, it brought a chill that went straight through me. He stood there in his designer jacket, phone still in hand, eyes shifting like he didn't belong. "Dad," he started, his voice low, almost apologetic. "I need to explain something." I wiped the oil from my hands and gestured to the chair in front of the counter. "Go ahead, son. I'm listening." He didn't sit. He looked around the shop, at the shelves of clocks and antique pieces, and then said, "Clara's been really stressed about the wedding. She wants everything perfect. Every photo, every guest, every moment. She's worked so hard, and she doesn't want anything to go wrong." I nodded slowly. "That's understandable. Weddings are stressful." He hesitated, swallowing hard. "She thinks it might be better if you don't come." For a moment, I didn't breathe. I thought I'd misheard him. The words didn't fit inside my mind. "What did you just say?" He took a deep breath. "It's not about you, Dad. It's about the image. The guests, the sponsors. Clara says the photos have to look consistent. She thinks your look might not match the aesthetic of the ceremony." I stared at him, my voice cracking. "My look?" He nodded, unable to meet my eyes. "You know, your hands, the clothes, the shop smell. She says it might clash with the high-end theme. The ceremony's going to be filmed, and she's worried. Worried that her father-in-law will embarrass her?" I interrupted. My voice rose despite me trying to stay calm. "Ethan, do you even hear yourself right now? Dad, please don't make this harder. You know how Clara is about details. She wants everything elegant." "And you agreed with her?" I asked. His silence was louder than any answer. I turned away, not trusting my voice. The ticking of the clocks filled the room, like time itself was mocking me. Each second felt like a hammer driving into my chest. "Ethan," I finally said, my tone low and trembling, "I was there when you took your first steps. When you learned to ride a bike. I stayed up all night fixing a watch to pay for your graduation suit. And now you're telling me I can't watch you get married because I'm not elegant enough for your fiancé's Instagram feed. He rubbed his face with both hands. Dad, it's just one day. After the wedding, we'll have dinner together. Just us. We'll celebrate properly. Please, try to understand. Understand? The word burned in my ears. How could I understand being erased from my own son's happiest day? I understand perfectly, I said finally, my voice steady but cold. You've chosen appearances over family. You've chosen to please a woman who measures love in likes and filters. Dad, don't say that. No, Ethan. You don't get to stop me. I may not wear suits worth a month's rent, but everything you have, the roof over your head, the business you run, it all started from these hands you call dirty. He said nothing. Just stood there, frozen in shame. Then I said something I never thought would leave my mouth. Get out of my shop. His eyes widened. Dad. Go. He hesitated, looking like a man torn between guilt and pride. Then he turned and left. The door closed softly behind him, but that sound, gentle as it was, felt like a wall collapsing inside me. I stayed there, surrounded by clocks that kept ticking, indifferent to heartbreak. Time doesn't stop for pain, it just keeps moving. And in that silence, I realized something cruel but true. Sometimes the people you raise with everything you have forget the very hands that built their future. But I also realized something else. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes silence is the moment before the storm. And mine was just beginning. That night, I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just sat on the old leather chair in my apartment above the shop, staring at the wall where Helen's photo hung. Her soft smile looked frozen in another lifetime. One where everything still made sense. How do I make peace with this, Helen? I whispered. How do I forgive a son who's ashamed of his own blood? The silence answered with the faint ticking of the clocks below. Each one struck like a heartbeat reminding me that time doesn't stop. Not for grief, not for betrayal. By morning, I still hadn't moved. The coffee on the table had gone cold, untouched. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the man staring back. My hands, those same hands that had built a future for Ethan, trembled slightly. My eyes looked tired, old, empty. That was the moment I made a decision. I was done being the man people pitied. If they thought I didn't belong at that wedding, I'd prove that I belonged everywhere dignity still existed. I opened the shop as usual that day. Mr. Harris, my neighbor who ran the shoe repair stall next door, came by with his usual grin. Richard, my friend, you look like you haven't slept in a week. I smiled faintly. You could say that. He leaned on the counter. I heard about the wedding. Word travels fast around here. I sighed. Yeah. Seems I'm not classy enough for the photos. The old man shook his head. You know, people today think respect comes with a price tag. But the real kind of respect can't be bought. It's earned through time, and you, my friend, have plenty of that. His words struck deeper than he probably realized. That was my craft. My curse. My gift. That night, when I closed the shop, I stood in the dark and looked at my reflection in the glass window. The sign outside said Marlowe Watch Repairs, since 1983. I traced my fingers across the letters. That name had meant honesty, loyalty, and pride for 4 decades. I wasn't going to let anyone, especially a woman who judged people by their shoes, erase it. So I made a plan. Not for revenge, not yet, but for truth. The wedding was 1 week away. I knew every detail from Ethan's excited updates before things went wrong. The location, the time, even the caterers. I'd helped him fix his cufflinks for the engagement dinner. I knew the color of the suit, the name of the photographer, everything. That Friday, I went to the tailor downtown. I need a suit, I said. Something elegant. Something that says I belong. The tailor looked me up and down. For an event? Yes, I said softly. A wedding. When I tried on the black suit, I barely recognized myself. The man in the mirror looked strong again, refined, composed, and proud. For the first time in months, I stood straight, my shoulders high. I wasn't hiding from anyone anymore. Then I went to a barber I hadn't visited in years. The young man trimmed my hair, cleaned my beard, polished my look until I saw a version of myself that Helen would have smiled at. By the time I left the shop, evening had fallen. The city lights shimmered in the glass windows like fireflies. I drove home in silence, my plan forming more clearly with each turn of the road. No, I wasn't going to beg to be invited. I wasn't going to crash the wedding like some desperate man trying to be seen. I would be there, but not as a guest. I'd be there as a witness. I wanted to see the kind of world my son had chosen, the one where love was filtered and respect came with a price tag. And when the truth revealed itself, as it always does, I wanted to be there to look into his eyes and let him see the cost of forgetting where he came from. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity. Because sometimes, you don't have to raise your voice to make a statement. Sometimes, silence dressed in dignity speaks louder than all the noise in the world. The day of the wedding arrived like a storm I'd been watching crawl across the horizon. Every tick of the clocks in my shop sounded louder than usual, as if time itself was warning me not to go. But I had made a promise to myself, not to interfere, not to plead, only to see with my own eyes the kind of world my son had chosen over me. I put on the black suit, the one that fit like dignity itself. White shirt, dark tie, shoes polished until they reflected light like glass. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a watchmaker anymore. I saw a man who had loved, lost, and learned that silence could be power. By 5:30, I was parked behind the Rosewood Garden Hall, a sprawling estate covered in lights and flowers, the kind of place that smells of money before it smells of roses. From where I stood, hidden behind the service entrance, I could see guests arriving in sleek cars, stepping out in shimmering gowns and pressed tuxedos. Laughter filled the air, but it sounded hollow, rehearsed, like the ticking of a clock that's wound too tight. Then I saw her. She stepped out of a white limousine, her dress so extravagant it seemed to swallow the ground beneath her. Photographers surrounded her like bees around honey. She smiled, waved, turned her head just enough for the cameras to capture the perfect angle. Even from a distance, I could see it. That smile wasn't joy. It was performance. And then, through the crowd, I saw him. Ethan. My son. Standing by the altar, nervous but glowing. He looked so proud, so unaware of the storm that was brewing around him. For a moment, my anger melted. I saw not a man, but the boy who once hugged me goodnight, whispering, "Love you, Dad." But that memory burned away as quickly as it came. Because when Clara turned to speak to her bridesmaids, her laughter drifted through the air, and I heard it. That tone. That arrogance. The same one she used the night she told Ethan I was too plain for her perfect photos. I stayed hidden in the shadows near the catering trucks, watching from afar as the ceremony began. Music swelled. Guests clapped. Vows were exchanged beneath crystal chandeliers hanging from the trees. Everything sparkled, everything gleamed, except my heart, which felt heavy as stone. When they kissed, when the applause erupted, I turned to leave. It was done. My son was married, and I wasn't part of his picture. But then, fate intervened. As I reached for my car door, I heard a voice, Clara's voice, sharp and full of irritation. "No, Mother, listen," she said into her phone, pacing near the catering tents. She hadn't noticed me in the shadows. Her words cut through the night air like shards of glass. "Of course the wedding's perfect. I made sure of it. Can you imagine if Ethan's old father had shown up? That man still smells like metal oil and dust. It would have ruined every photo. I told Ethan there was no way I'd have someone like that in my pictures. He finally agreed. I mean, honestly, what's the use of that man anymore? He already raised him. He served his purpose." My body went cold. Every word landed like a hammer against my chest. She laughed again. "Don't act shocked, Mom. I'm practical, not cruel. Ethan's father is just an old memory. And I don't keep broken things." Something inside me snapped. But I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there in the dark, my fists trembling, my breath heavy, as I watched the woman who had stolen my son mock everything I had ever stood for. When she walked back toward the reception lights, smiling again like nothing had happened, I finally turned the ignition. The headlights reflected in the mirror for a split second, and in that reflection I didn't see anger anymore. I saw purpose. As I drove away, the sound of distant laughter followed me like a ghost. But beneath that noise, I could almost hear Helen's voice, calm, steady, whispering through the wind. Time reveals everything, Richard. Just wait. And I knew she was right. Because some people mistake silence for surrender. But what they don't know is that silence is where revenge learns to breathe. For 3 days after the wedding, I barely spoke a word. I kept the shop closed, the clock silent, as if time itself had stopped to grieve with me. But grief, like rust, spreads fast if you let it sit too long, and I refused to let mine consume me. So I turned my pain into purpose. The words I had overheard from Clara replayed in my head again and again. He already served his purpose. Maybe to her, I was just a discarded tool. But I'd spent my life fixing broken things. And this time, the thing that needed repair was the truth. One evening, I sat at my workbench and opened my old laptop. I searched Clara's name online. What I found wasn't surprising, it was sickening. Her social media was filled with carefully curated lies, luxury trips, designer outfits, and captions about family values that made me want to laugh and scream at the same time. But buried under all that glitter, I found something darker. Whispers. Hints from people who had known her before she became Clara, the influencer. One comment stood out. You moved on fast, Clara. Poor Jason is still paying for that car you made him buy. I clicked on the user's profile, a woman named Naomi. I sent her a message. This is Richard Marlowe. I believe we've both been hurt by the same person. To my surprise, she replied within an hour. She told me everything. Clara had dated Jason for years, convinced him to buy her a car in his name, then left him once he ran out of money. She's a gold digger, Mr. Marlowe, Naomi wrote. She destroys people, then moves on like nothing happened. Naomi sent me screenshots, photos, and messages, proof of how Clara used men for her own gain. I printed every page and placed them neatly in a folder marked truth. But fate wasn't done yet. A week later, a woman named Margaret, one of my loyal customers, came to my shop in tears. She had left a family heirloom, a gold vintage watch, for repair a month ago. I came last week to pick it up, but it was gone, she said. You told me it was still being cleaned, but when I checked this morning, I saw this. She showed me her phone. On the screen was a new post from Clara's Instagram, her wrist adorned with the exact same gold watch. Same model. Same engraving. The caption read, "A timeless piece for a timeless woman." My blood turned cold. I rushed to the safe in the back of the shop. The envelope marked Margaret Collins Vintage Gold Rolex was there, but empty. The watch was gone. I checked the security footage. And then my heart stopped. There she was, Clara, entering my shop one afternoon while I'd stepped out for lunch. She looked around, found the spare key from the drawer, opened the safe, and took the envelope. She smiled at the camera before walking out, like she knew I'd see it one day. That smile burned into me. It wasn't enough that she humiliated me, now she'd stolen from me. I copied the footage onto a flash drive, printed her posts, and gathered every screenshot Naomi had sent. I placed them all inside the folder. The next morning, I went to the police station. The officer on duty looked up as I entered. "Can I help you, sir?" "Yes," I said, laying the folder on his desk. "I'd like to file a report for theft and fraud against my daughter-in-law." He flipped through the evidence slowly, then looked up. "You're certain about this?" "More certain than I've ever been about anything in my life." They opened an investigation immediately. That afternoon, while I was back in my shop trying to breathe through the chaos in my chest, my phone rang. It was Ethan. His voice trembled. "Dad, what did you do?" I stayed calm. I told the truth. "She's been arrested," he said, his words shaking. "At the gym. In front of everyone. They're saying she stole something, your customer's watch." "Is that true?" "Yes," I said quietly. "And there's more, Ethan. She's been lying to you. About her past. About who she really is." He drove straight to the shop. When he walked in, his face was pale, eyes red from disbelief. "Show me," he whispered. I opened the folder and placed the evidence on the counter. The photos, the messages, the footage. He read everything silently. His hands trembled as he turned each page. When he saw the video of Clara stealing from my shop, He collapsed into the chair behind him. "How could I not see it?" he murmured. "How could I let her do this to you?" I placed my hand gently on his shoulder. "Because love blinds the best of us, son. But truth always finds its way." He looked up at me, eyes filled with shame. "Dad, I don't deserve your forgiveness." I sighed, my voice steady but soft. "You don't have to earn my love, Ethan. You already have it. But respect, that you'll have to rebuild." Tears rolled down his cheeks as he whispered, "I will. I promise." That night, for the first time in years, my shop felt alive again. The clocks ticked in perfect rhythm, as if time itself had finally exhaled. And I realized something I'd forgotten long ago. The truth doesn't need to shout. It only needs to be heard by the right ears. It's been 6 months since that day. 6 months since truth shattered the glittering illusion that nearly destroyed my family. The world moved on, as it always does, but for me, time finally began to heal instead of hurt. Clara's world collapsed like glass under pressure. The police found more than we ever imagined: debts, fake contracts, lies stacked on lies. She was sentenced for theft and fraud. Her followers vanished faster than her apologies. For the first time, I saw the cost of living without conscience. Ethan came back home. Not as a son seeking pity, but as a man learning humility. He spends his mornings in the shop with me now, sleeves rolled up, eyes focused on the tiny gears in a pocket watch, learning the patience that time demands. When he breaks a spring or drops a screw, he laughs, shakes his head, and says, "Guess I'm not as steady as you yet, Dad." And every time I answer, "You will be. Just keep listening to the rhythm." That rhythm, the quiet, steady tick of forgiveness, became the sound of our healing. He still carries guilt, but I've told him something Helen used to tell me. We can't fix what's gone, but we can build something better with what's left. And that's exactly what we're doing. Sometimes, customers walk by and recognize us. They whisper about the story they heard on the news. The influencer, the arrest, the old watchmaker who exposed her lies. I don't mind. Let them talk. Because behind all the noise, the truth is simple. Dignity never needs defending. It defends you. I often look up at Helen's photo on the wall, her gentle smile glowing beneath the shop light, and I whisper, "We did it, love. Our boy found his way back." And in the stillness, I can almost hear her say, "You kept your promise." Now, when Ethan closes the shop each evening, we walk home together. Two men, one who once lost his faith, and one who learned that faith in family can survive anything. He still asks me, "Dad, do you think Mom would forgive me?" And I tell him, she already has. The moment you chose honesty over pride. Because that's the heart of it all. The moral I hope every soul listening understands. No matter how far you drift, love built on truth will always guide you home. Respect can't be bought. Dignity can't be faked. And the people who raised you are not your past. They are your foundation. So if you're watching this, and life has ever made you feel small or unwanted, remember this. You are not defined by how others see you. You are defined by how you rise when they try to make you disappear. That if this story touched your heart, red heart, backhand index pointing right, smash that like button to show your support for every parent who's ever been forgotten. Speech balloon comment, respect. If you believe dignity is worth more than money. Television, and subscribe for more true stories that prove love, truth, and family always find their way back home. Because here, every story reminds us that time can wound, but it can also heal. Until next time, my friends, stay kind, stay humble, and never let anyone make you feel unworthy.